I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. Throughout her life, Her Majesty the Queen, my beloved mother,
King Charles has long understood that in the monarchy, there is only room for one sovereign at a time. The role is all-consuming, and no matter how prepared or experienced a Prince of Wales might be, he cannot truly lead while the reigning monarch still sits on the throne. That is why the world was stunned when Charles announced he was finished with the responsibilities and pressures that had defined his life for decades. He said he was choosing a quieter, more private existence, and he made it clear that his son, Prince William, and daughter-in-law, Princess Catherine, were the future. The decision seemed sudden to the public, but behind the palace walls, it was the result of months, perhaps even years, of quiet reflection, family discussions, and deeply personal moments. This shift began in 2024 when Charles's health took a serious turn. Initially, the palace revealed only that he was being treated for an enlarged prostate, but during that process, doctors discovered something far more serious: cancer. For a man who had waited longer than any British monarch in history to take the throne, the diagnosis was a devastating blow. At 76, he was still adjusting to his role after Queen Elizabeth's 7-decade reign. But now, his ability to carry out his duties was under threat. The news shocked the nation, which had only just begun to see Charles as their sovereign. Soon after, another announcement shook the public. Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, revealed she too was undergoing treatment for cancer. People around the world were unsettled by the news. Catherine had become a modern icon within the royal family, admired for her composure, dedication, and ability to balance her duties with raising 3 young children. Her absence from public engagements left a noticeable void, and her recovery became a priority over royal appearances. Princess Anne and Queen Camilla stepped up to cover additional engagements, with Anne known for her relentless work ethic and Camilla quietly increasing her presence beside the king. Meanwhile, Prince William faced the dual challenge of supporting his wife through her illness and shouldering a growing share of royal duties. Those close to the family said he was under immense strain, navigating diplomatic meetings, charitable projects, and public expectations while managing private concerns about his wife and father. Inside the palace, whispers of major changes began to circulate. Charles was determined not to let his illness appear as a sign of weakness, but the reality was clear. His treatment was exhausting, involving repeated hospital visits and stretches of necessary rest. For a man who prided himself on diligence, scaling back was difficult to accept. Even as his doctors urged him to limit his schedule, Charles pressed on with state business, meeting political leaders, reviewing official documents, and maintaining his presence in government affairs. But those closest to him could see moments when his strength faltered. One aide recalled a diplomatic reception shortly after a particularly draining week of treatment. The king remained gracious and composed, but his weariness was unmistakable. Queen Camilla adjusted her own calendar to be by his side during treatments, quietly offering her support. Privately, Charles began to speak about the future of the monarchy in a more serious way. During one visit to the hospital, he reportedly shared his fears about the long-term stability of the institution he had waited so long to lead. He understood the weight of the crown more than most, and he knew there would come a time when passing it on would be the right choice, not because he was forced to, but because the monarchy required it. That moment arrived quietly, away from cameras and fanfare. In a private meeting within one of the palace's most intimate rooms, Charles gathered the people who mattered most in shaping the monarchy's future: Queen Camilla, Prince William, and Princess Catherine. Those present say the tone of the conversation was unlike any official briefing or formal audience. Charles spoke not as a king issuing orders, but as a father and husband speaking from the heart. He admitted with calm but unmistakable emotion that he felt his chapter as an active leader of the monarchy was ending. This was not a resignation in the formal sense, nor a public abdication. Instead, it was a deeply personal acknowledgement that his health, the pressures of the role, and the needs of the institution all pointed toward one truth. It was time to allow the next generation to step forward. William listened intently without interrupting, aware of the significance of what his father was saying. Catherine sat beside him, poised yet clearly absorbing the weight of the moment. Camilla remained by Charles's side, offering silent support. In that small room, without a single photographer present, Charles told his son and daughter-in-law that they would now take on the primary role of representing the monarchy. It was not an abrupt decision. It had been considered carefully, weighed against tradition, and made with a sense of both duty and peace. Those inside the palace who heard about the meeting said it was an emotional moment, not because it signaled an ending, but because it felt like a wise and graceful transition. Charles was not surrendering his title, he remained king, but he was stepping back in a way that would give William and Catherine space to lead in their own style. For a man who had waited a lifetime for the throne, some might wonder why he would relinquish the spotlight so soon. But to Charles, the role had never been about clinging to power. It was about service, and when he felt he could no longer serve at full strength, he saw no shame in passing responsibility to those who could. From that point on, the shift in the monarchy was subtle but undeniable. William began to take the lead at high-profile events, representing Britain on the world stage with increasing confidence. He played a greater role in international diplomacy, his measured approach and calm demeanor earning him praise from foreign leaders. Catherine, meanwhile, expanded her influence in ways few princesses of Wales had done in more than a century. She took an active hand in selecting charities, influencing public policy discussions, and granting royal endorsements, a privilege not held by anyone in her position since Queen Alexandra. This was not ceremonial involvement. Catherine's new responsibilities gave her real sway over cultural trends, economic support for British businesses, and the promotion of causes close to her heart. She used this platform to champion environmental initiatives, support mental health awareness, and advance early childhood education. Her return to public life after her illness was met with overwhelming public affection. People no longer saw her solely as a royal consort. They saw her as a leader in her own right. In the background, Charles remained a guiding figure, offering advice, but allowing his son and daughter-in-law to put their own stamp on the institution. His decision to step back was as much about securing the monarchy's relevance in a changing world as it was about his own well-being. He knew William and Catherine represented a bridge between tradition and modernity, embodying values that resonated with younger generations while respecting the customs that gave the crown its stability. Not everyone in the palace found the change easy. Queen Camilla, in particular, faced a complicated emotional reality. For years, she had worked to earn her place within the royal family, enduring public skepticism and often harsh criticism. Just as she had become a key figure beside her husband, her role was shifting again, this time into the shadows, as William and Catherine took center stage. Outwardly, she remained composed, continuing her duties and supporting the king. But those close to her say she could not help but feel sidelined, watching the attention and influence she had built gradually pass to a younger generation. Still, the royal family presented a united front. Public appearances featuring Charles, William, and Catherine together signaled stability, even as the real balance of power was quietly changing behind the scenes. This was not the drama of an abdication or a constitutional crisis. It was a carefully managed transfer of responsibility designed to strengthen the monarchy's future without shaking its foundations. By 2026, William and Catherine's leadership had become an accepted reality. They were no longer just the heirs in waiting. They were actively shaping the monarchy's public image and priorities. William's focus on global environmental challenges through the Earthshot Prize and Catherine's influence on social causes gave the crown a fresh, relevant edge. Their approachable style resonated with the public, while their respect for royal tradition reassured those wary of change. For Charles, this was the outcome he had hoped for. He could step back from the relentless pace of public life, focus on his health, and enjoy private time with his family, knowing the monarchy was in capable hands. His statement that his life was over was never about resignation to decline. It was about acknowledging that one chapter had ended and another had begun. In making that choice, he ensured that the institution he had devoted his life to would remain strong, guided by leaders ready to carry it into a new era. For those inside the palace who witnessed the gradual shift, it was clear that Charles's move was not a retreat born of weakness, but a deliberate and measured act of foresight. He had lived through the reign of a monarch who worked until her very last days, and he understood the strain that such an unyielding commitment could place on both the sovereign and the family. His decision to hand over much of the responsibility before reaching that point was, in its own way, an act of devotion, not just to the monarchy, but to the people it serves. In private, Charles confided to friends that the role of monarch is not something one can do halfway. The crown demands constant attention, endless engagement, and the resilience to navigate political, social, and personal storms without faltering in public. His illness had shown him that the pace was unsustainable for him in the long term. Rather than cling to the role out of pride, he chose to ensure its duties were fulfilled with the full energy they required, something William and Catherine were ready to provide. William, for his part, approached this new era with a mixture of humility and quiet determination. He had been trained for the role since childhood, often under the watchful eye of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, and more recently through candid conversations with his father. But now the expectations were different. The decisions he made carried immediate weight. His engagements abroad were not simply ceremonial. They were opportunities to strengthen Britain's relationships on the global stage. At home, he was tasked with addressing issues that mattered deeply to the public, from environmental challenges to the mental health crisis. Catherine adapted just as seamlessly, though her path was perhaps even more groundbreaking. The increased authority given to her was a testament to the trust Charles placed in her judgment and the respect she had earned from the public. She embraced her ability to influence causes and businesses with the royal seal of approval, careful to align her choices with the values she wished to promote: sustainability, community welfare, and forward-thinking innovation. Her blend of elegance, empathy, and strategic thinking gave the monarchy a softer yet equally effective form of leadership. Still, the transition was not without its complexities. Royal tradition is steeped in symbolism, and any significant change can be unsettling to those who hold to the old ways. But Charles's gradual approach softened the impact. There was no abrupt handover, no single day when the public saw a different figure at the helm. Instead, it was a slow evolution, with William and Catherine appearing at more engagements, speaking more often on key issues, and subtly shifting the tone of the monarchy toward a more modern image. Even Camilla, while privately feeling the weight of stepping back, recognized the importance of the move. She understood that her role was now as much about supporting Charles in his quieter chapter as it was about maintaining her own public presence. In her own way, she too was part of ensuring the monarchy's survival through this change. And so, without upheaval or scandal, the British monarchy entered a new phase, one defined not by the crowning of a new sovereign, but by the careful sharing of its responsibilities. For Charles, this was the culmination of a lifetime of service and the ultimate act of stewardship. For William and Catherine, it was the beginning of their true reign in all but name. And for the public, it was a reassurance that the monarchy could adapt, endure, and remain relevant, even in an era when change seems constant. In the end, the king's quiet decision was as significant as any coronation or state ceremony. Without fanfare, without a proclamation to the world, Charles had redefined what it meant to be sovereign, showing that true strength can lie in knowing when to let go. William and Catherine, now leading with grace and determination, embody the future he envisioned. And while Charles may no longer stand at the forefront of royal life, his legacy will be defined not only by his years as king, but by the wisdom of the moment when he chose to step aside.